The Shop 3 Sheep Eater. Written and read by W.P. Thrift, who can be contacted at Lantis Armstrong on Twitter. And cover art created by JD, contactable at Radix_L on Twitter. Chapter 9 Airy Day, I'm Chickenin'. Part 1. It was a day in late September that Lantis finally hunted down the cargo shorts he had arrived here in. They had been washed, so he worried his pack of smokes would have been destroyed in the washing machine, but they had been mercifully taken out and placed on a nearby shelf in the pantry. He fished them off of it, his lighter too, and went outside to sit on the front porch and take one out of the pack, place it to his lips, and lit his lighter. He drew closer, closer. He had waited so long for this. At first, when he had arrived here in July, he was in near constant shock. His body couldn't register the nicotine fits, let alone much of anything else. After that, through all of August, he was in constant pain, and the level of pain was so severe that it buried the continuing nicotine fits, which lied in wait, just beneath the surface. But now, far into September, he was able to knock out the warm-up exercise, burn through the secret agent lessons with either Mr. or Mrs. March, whomever was training him that day, and then have plenty of energy left over to just chill around the house and enjoy the day. He had even peeled back his hours spent sleeping to a regular 8, no longer needing immense amounts of recovery time. The Marches were arguing over how to up the regimen still. They both agreed they needed to start throwing more at him, but they couldn't agree on what exactly. And until they figured out how to fill up his day, he was free to just relax in the afternoons, like he was now. And the best way to relax? Finally remove that cloud from his head, which came from his body screaming at him to inject it with nicotine. It'd been so long. Soon, so very soon, he would have that pure, smoking satisfaction. Yoink! Mr. March said, snatching the pack of cigarettes, and lighter, all from his hands. Huh? What? Lantis looked up at him. What are you doing? Don't you know that smoking reduces your lung capacity by 75%, young man? Yeah! We can't have you doing that to yourself when you're undergoing so much rigorous training now, can we? Mr. March laughed at the ridiculousness of it all. Lantis gave the calm, collected, and reasonable response of, I'll fucking kill you, you old man! As he leapt up at him. Whammo! Lantis felt the dirt crashing around his back before he even felt the blow which had sent him tumbling off the porch into the ground beyond it. He shook, clutched his chest, and slowly leaned up while forcing one eye open. I'll tell you what, Mr. March said. When you're tough enough to take me in a fight, you can smoke all you want. But good luck with that. I'm spry for my age. Mr. March laughed all the way back inside, then closed the door behind him. He put Lantis's cigs away in his front pocket, making sure that the action was visible to Lantis so that he would know right where they were if he wanted to try for them. Damn it! Lantis heaved, trying to catch his breath. Sitting up finally, he noticed something just inside of the barn. He jumped up to his feet with renewed energy. Whatever was over there had been driving him crazy for a while now, and he was finally going to go over there and find out what it was if he had to spend all afternoon scouring the barn top to bottom. Entering, the smell of hay was overwhelming. It hit him with almost a sinking sensation, recollecting something from it, but he couldn't quite figure out what it was. Walking on in past the empty horse stables, he saw a large, serrated wheel in the barn, very thin, it could possibly be attached to some kind of machinery. It looked too big for a tractor, so he couldn't place what else might use it. The loft overhead had more hay bales, and no obvious way to get up there besides climbing on top of the stables. A red toolbox in the corner of the room caught his eye, and he ventured towards it. It sat on a wooden stool, pushed up against the back of the barn. There was a photograph underneath it. Only the corner wedged under the toolbox so it wouldn't fly away were a breeze to pass through here. On it, two adults he didn't recognize were standing behind a younger-looking Cassidy, and right next to her was someone much younger still. And from around the corner of the last stall, just before he could walk past it, that same young girl from the photograph stepped out. Lantis halted. She was slightly older now than in the picture. The picture had her at around 5, but now she was 8, maybe 9. She had natural red hair pulled back into a ponytail and wore pink overalls. A couple freckles polka-dotted her face. Lantis and the girl stood there for a moment, not moving. Then, peeking its head out from behind the young girl, a lone Rhode Island red hen appeared. It was just walking, but stopped and turned to look up at Lantis for a moment. The hen said. "It's a chicken!" Lantis cried out, immediately tackling the hen with all the power he could muster, the two of them rolling head over heels until his legs hit the side of the barn, and he held the chicken above his head, his mouth as wide open as it could get, just staring up at the chicken, with nothing but the purest of joy in his eyes. The chicken just sat there in his hands, the quietest, slightest escaped its beak, but it was otherwise unfazed. The girl, however, now had her mouth opened in shock. She ran over to look at the chicken, then looked down at the guy, jumping back when she saw just how happy he looked. That's my chicken," she said reluctantly. I have to bring her back to her pen to feed all the other chickens." "You mean there's more of these?" Lantis asked, twirling himself around to get up on his knees. "How could there be more of these? This one's so awesome! I love you, chicken. I love you!" He hugged and squeezed the chicken against his chest, though not hard enough to hurt the chicken. The girl smiled. "I like chickens too, but you seem to really like them." "I was raised by a chicken," Lantis noted. She rolled her eyes, not believing him. "I have to take her back now," the girl said, reaching for the chicken. "Oh!" Lantis protested loudly. "Can't I hold her for just one more minute?" You can carry her to the pen, I guess," she said. "Oh, sure! I have the rest of the day off," Lantis said. They left the barn and walked around behind it, through the peach trees out behind the house, and to an opening where there was a large wooden chicken pen that opened into a fenced-off area where many chickens ran free. The ground was stripped free of grass within the fenced area, as the chickens ate everything. There were 24 out in the field, and, unseen to Lantis now, another dozen inside the chicken house. "That's so amazing! I've been here for months and I never knew this was here! You've got to show me around sometime. I want to know what all else you have, particularly if there's more chickens involved," Lantis said. All of the chickens out here were hens. So, without a telltale rooster to crow and let everyone know that they were here, the chickens had remained shrouded from him until now. "This is all the chickens we have," she replied. Somehow, she wished there were more chickens. The way he was talking about them made her slightly happier that even what they did have was even here. "Oh, I'm Lantis, by the way," he finally introduced himself, though it was mostly as a stalling tactic as they approached the fence, where he'd have to put the hen back down. "I know that," she said. "You are living in my house. I'm Haley. I introduced myself to you shortly after you got here, but you were still a bit delirious back then." Is that so? Lantis was surprised. Yeah, you're always either sleeping, injured, or not in your right mind, Haley pointed out. Huh, well, I'm getting better now, he replied. Less better when I have to put this chicken down. Haley still opened the fence and motioned for him to release the chicken. Goodbye, chicken. I'll never forget you, Lanta said, giving the chicken a very slight toss just above ground level, so she'd hit the ground and go running back into the pen. So, you feed them now? Yeah, I do, Haley replied. If it were winter, I'd also have to turn on the heating lamps inside the pen. They get so cold during the winter months. Let me help, Lantis quickly insisted. If I'm nice to the chickens and feed them, then they'll be forever in my debt. Mr. Roosty told me that. Mr. Roosty? Haley asked. Oh, you mean that chicken that you said raised you? Yes, Lantis replied quickly. He was a happy Mr. Roosty, but sometimes he'd be a very, very violent Mr. Roosty. Like this one time we came across a brown bear. Have you ever seen a rooster kill a bear? A rooster couldn't kill no bear, Haley replied frankly. Mr. Roosty could, Lantis insisted. Okay, you can help feed the chickens, she replied quickly, wanting to change subjects. Man, you're weird. Yay, chickens! Lantis cheered. They went into the chicken house and refilled the troughs with grain and the watering containers with water. Then Haley ended up having to drag Lantis out of the pen by his ear just to get him to leave. But I haven't petted all the chickens yet, Lantis protested. A pet chicken is a happy chicken. You can pet more of them tomorrow, Haley shouted. You promise? I can come back here tomorrow? Lantis was excited. Okay, so what's next? I have an awful lot of chores. You're probably going to be too tired if you help with all of them, Haley said. Nothing else involves chickens, like I already said. Oh, that's fine. I'm curious about what all else there is around here anyway, Lantis told her. And so they were off for a grand tour of the farm. Animals-wise, there was a lone goat, a few rabbits to be fed and watered. There were a couple gardens hidden behind all the peach trees as well. One field each for potatoes, watermelon, cabbages, onions, corn, and 3 different ones for beans. With the exception of the potatoes and onions, all of the fields were currently empty. It wasn't the right season for growing most of these, but one could still tell what went where by the signs in front of them. Haley had to go through all the rows of onions and potatoes to pick weeds and check for bugs and make sure the sprinkler system was still working right. Lantis tackled one end of the field while Haley did the other, and they met in the middle when the job was done. We only sell peaches on the farmer's market. These gardens here are just for us, Haley informed offhand as they were walking away from them. There was more hay that needed baling and tossing up onto the rafters in the barn. They didn't have any cows or horses, but Cassidy had been planning to get at least one horse pretty soon, so there were preparations to make. There was also general upkeep to do. Haley had to venture the full length of the fence around the property to check for tears in the wires, varmints trying to dig under it, and so on. She didn't tackle the entire thing in a single day, but rather about 1/7 of its total length each day. She had a system in place to make sure that the entire thing was checked at least once a week, in this manner. It was still several acres of walking and observing, though. She let Lantis know where she'd be ending at and what path to take to find his way there, and so they split up and once again met in the middle, where they gave an all-clear progress report on damage to the fence. Arriving back at the house well before the sun had even begun to set, Haley was shocked and amazed. Oh wow! I'll actually get to eat supper with everyone for once, Haley exclaimed. Thank you, Mr. Lantis. He turned to her, kneeled down, and exclaimed, I got to see chickens today. She gave up. That's right, you did see the chickens. So, chickens again tomorrow? Lantis asked as they stepped up on the porch. I mean, if you're free again, I'd certainly appreciate the help. We've been short-handed around here since Mom and Dad... Haley's voice trailed off. Cool. Tomorrow it is, then. Early the next morning, before sunrise, Mr. March had a devilish grin on his face, just rubbing his hands together while stepping out to the front porch. Lantis was already out there, the glow of the moon overhead shining down on him while he jogged rapidly in place, getting warmed up and ready to go. "I've got something real special for you today," Mr. March declared, with a wicked tinge to his voice. "The missus and I were talking all day yesterday, and we finally came to the perfect compromise. A workout routine that'll knock the stuffing out of you. You won't even have the tiniest ounce of strength left. You'll be lucky to get through it all by midnight. We took what we were doing before, and we tripled it." "And then I'll get to see the chickens?" Lantis asked, excitedly. Wait, what? Huh?" Mr. March was completely thrown off by that response. "Come on, let's go then! Let's go! Lantis pressed energetically. The sun peaked, rose just a tad, and then Mr. March collapsed from exhaustion, as he had been holding a punching bag that he had ordered Lantis to give 1,000 reps into. It took every ounce of strength in his old bones to hold it up while Lantis jackhammered into it, driven to get through this as quickly as possible. "So now we're going to practice a round of CQC, right?" Lantis hurried him. He was in such a rush today. There were chickens afoot. "What now?" Mr. March tried to catch his breath. "Close quarters combat. We always do a sparring session after the punching bag. You're trying to teach me how to do all my stances perfectly while I'm dead tired, remember?" Lantis reminded him, as though the old man had forgotten. "Oh, forget that, young'un. I need to go rest." Mr. March got up and began to limp back towards the house. "You're clearly not tired enough to benefit from that training. I just wasn't prepared today for how, vigorously you would take to the new routine. But just you wait till tomorrow. Oh, mercy." "We're done for today, then? Already?" Lantis froze, and then cocked his head to the side in confusion. "Well, I am. You can talk to Mrs. March and see if she's up for sparring if you'd like, but, I'm calling it," Mr. March said, then went back inside the house to sit on the couch and watch TV while trying to catch his breath. "Huh. Well then," Lantis thought. "All right, it's chicken time! Haley! Chicken time! I'm free!" She opened her bedroom window on the top floor. "Stop your shouting down there! I just woke up!" she called down from her room. Lantis crossed his arms, tapping his fingers excitedly on both arms, while also tapping his right foot. He still hadn't gotten over how uncomfortable shoes felt to him, but he couldn't argue that at least his ankles had stopped swelling to the size of melons after each workout. There may be something to these training boots he was given, after all. He just wished Haley would hurry up and get down here. There were chickens afoot. Later that week, a large delivery truck pulled up to the McCoys' residency. The driver got out and banged on the door, asking for Cassidy when Mrs. March answered. "Yeah, looks like we got, 100 barrels of grain," the delivery man said. Off towards the barn, Lantis was helping Haley with her chores again, this time very carefully taking apart the horse stables inside the barn to have them replaced with brand new lumber. Most of the stables could be replaced, but the load-bearing beams, which made up part of the stables, were pretty easily rattled, and there's where being careful came in. Noticing the truck, they both emerged to see if they could help out. "Oh, yeah, sure," Cassidy called to them. "Just unload 'em and bring 'em round back of the barn. I have a tarp set up out there to put 'em under already." "Gotcha," Lantis replied, then ran over to the back of the truck with Haley. The hatch was already open and the ramp extended by the delivery man before he had went to the door, so Lantis jumped up onto it and began unfastening the belts that held them in place. Lantis picked up the first barrel, but it felt empty, so he shook it a bit before saying, "Are these the right ones? This one's empty." "Oh, that's weird," Haley said. "Hey, help me get the handcart over here so we can start wheeling these things out. They should be a whopping 150 pounds each." "You don't say." Lantis said, dropping the empty barrel back down. It landed with a very heavy thud and began to tip over. He quickly shot a hand back to catch it. Huh? 150 pounds, right? Yeah, Haley called back absent-mindedly. Let's race to see who can get the most unloaded then. You with the cart and me without. Lantis issued his challenge, having just figured out what was going on with the so-called empty barrel. I could probably carry 2 at a time with this thing, long as they're already stacked up. I can't stack 'em myself, Haley commented. Then she turned back to see Lantis holding 2 barrels, one under each arm. Are both of those barrels empty? Nah, I just figured out that they were full. Okay, on your mark, get set, and go! He rushed out the back of the truck and around to the back of the barn to put them both down, and ran back again before Haley had even gotten off the truck. He did wait patiently for her to push the cart down the ramp before grabbing 2 more and jumping on out past her. You jerk! You knew I couldn't keep up with you, Haley said in mock outrage, but was in fact genuinely amazed to see him sprinting on so fast with those things, carrying them with seemingly no effort. Cassidy, after signing all the paperwork, headed back out with the delivery man and finally witnessed this for herself as Lantis practiced balancing a 3rd barrel on top of his head. It fell off halfway to the barn and he caught it with his foot, and then hopped on one leg the rest of the way. Her jaw fell slack at the sight of this. Now what in the world? Have you ever seen such a sight? Cassidy asked nobody, but the delivery man answered, Yeah, I have. Delivered a couch to a gorilla with human intelligence once. He carried it on into his house about that easily. Cassidy ignored the guy as she stepped out from under the porch to watch this in amazement. Are you gonna help? Haley stopped to ask during one of her deliveries. Oh, right. Cassidy suddenly became aware of herself and hurried onto the truck to grab another handcart. She wasn't just impressed with Lantis's newfound strength, but with the sheer joy he seemed to bring doing hard work around the farm. It was like a game to him, which she thought that while not knowing it was a literal game to him, as he was challenging Haley to a race. But all the same, she had a deep respect for a strong, hard worker. She could scarcely believe this was the same person she had been feeding all his meals to through a straw, not even 3 months earlier. That concludes Chapter 9 of Sheep Eater. Tune in every Tuesday for new chapters, and please subscribe to be notified the moment they're released. If you would like to reach me, you can do so at Lantis Armstrong on Twitter. That's LANTISARMSTRONG. Thank you for tuning in, and we hope you'll join us again for next week's chapter, Every Day I'm Chickenin', Part 2.